We have some resolutions we would like to take care of at the present time. There is a consent calendar of privilege resolutions that are before you. Is there objection? Without objection, the consent calendar of privilege resolutions are adopted. We have some other resolutions. Secretary will read.
Senate Resolution 1170, a resolution by Senator Hill IV, a resolution creating the Senate Study Committee on Local Government Fees and for other purposes.
Is there objection? Without objection, the resolution is adopted.
Senate Resolution 1171 by Senator Hill IV and others, a resolution congratulating and commending the Rotary Corporation for other purposes.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? Chair is none. The resolution is adopted. Senator from the 28th, you are recognized to remove a bill. Or move.
Mr. President, I move that Senate agree to the House amendment to the Senate substitute to HB 871.
Read the caption.
House Bill 871 by Representative LaRiccia, the 169th, and others. A bill to enactment in Title 48 of the OCGA relating to sales and use taxes, creating an exemption from state sales and use tax for 50% of the sales price of manufactured homes to be converted into real property and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Looks like we have a special guest that has arrived in the Senate. Let me ask the senators to please take your seats and cease all audible conversations. We'll bring our special guest in the right way in the Senate. Remind him of his glorious days when he served in this august body. Mr. Sergeant at Arms. Please escort the very distinguished and good friend of mine, the Speaker of the House, David Ralston, to the rostrum at this time. my honor now to recognize the Speaker of the House, David Ralston.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the Senate. I haven't said that in a long time, but I couldn't let this day go by without coming to bid best wishes to my friend of many years, Lieutenant Governor Cagle. I remember when he came to the Senate 2 years after me. I sat back there about where John Wilkerson's sitting, and he sat about where Greg Kirk was sitting, and so we were truly the backbench senators at that time, but he became my friend. We have been friends. He has been a pleasure to work with. I think that since, hopefully since I've been in this position, we've had better relations between the two chambers. I think today has been a great day. Today, this session has been a good session, and I want to tell him how much I appreciate the cooperation between the two chambers this session. It's not often that you get to fully fund QBE and pass a historic tax cut in the same session. So I don't know what the future holds, but I know that Casey Cagle is my friend, and I want to wish him well and wish y'all well as we go into the final 2 hours here. God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Appreciate it very much. Thank you. Very good. Very good.
It's in Sean's box.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 20. Did we read the caption? Read the caption. You read it? Chair recognizes Senator 28th to present or speak his motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I bring back to you HB 871 that Mr. Speaker and the House and the great body over there, the great work they did, made a little tweak on it. If you'll remember, this was the mobile manufactured home parity bill with the taxes. Basically, we're just reducing their state taxes by 50%. If you'll recall, currently a mobile home will pay, or a manufactured home will pay 2.5 times the taxes of a site-built home. So the only thing we've changed, or the House changed, is in line 23, simply going from, it currently says a width of at least 16 feet and 1 inch. We're now changing that to contain an area of at least 650 square feet. So we're simply changing from the shape to looking more at the size. With that, I yield the well.
All those in favor of the senator's motion will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary, unlock the machine. Senator from the 8th will stand by. Senator from the 8th on 85. Okay, yeah. Okay, okay, all right. On the motion, the ayes are 49, the nays are 2, and Senate has agreed to the House amendment. Chair recognizes Senator from the 8th.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate agree to the House amendment to the Senate substitute to House Bill 85.
Read the caption.
House Bill 85 by Representative Powell, the 171st, and others. The bill will be filed enactment in Code Section 48.5271 of the OCGA related to table of values for conservation use of forest land so as to revise the methodology used to establish forest land fair market value and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 8th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a bill that we passed unanimously over here a while back. The House found one little error. There was a word added that didn't need to be there, and they struck one word. That's all the change was made. Ask for your favorable consideration.
All those in favor of the Senator's motion will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary, unlock the machine. Senator from the 48th will stand by. No, come now. Come now. Chair recognizes Senator from the 31st. Please give the Senator your attention.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. You should find on your desk a copy of the devotions and prayers from this session. This is, we've been doing these since 2009, and like a lot of things down here, oftentimes we get credit for things that we may or may not have actually done. And I would like to thank some folks that have helped get this together this year. My staff takes the audio from the chaplains each day and transcribes that into this booklet. And the folks that worked on it this year is Will Hamilton in my office. Will, if you would just raise your hand over there. Jackie Azar, who is one of our doorkeepers, came by and did some proofreading. Abby Conrad from AID up in Suite 421 has participated in this as well for the second time, I might add. And of course, my assistant, Jenny Guadalupe. So I just wanted to thank those folks and thank you all.
Thank you all very, very much, Senator, and thank you for your work as well. On the motion, the ayes are 43 and the nays are 1, and the Senate has agreed to the House amendment to the Senate substitute. Chair recognizes Senator from the 48th.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate agree to the House amendment to Senate Bill 376.
376, read the caption.
Senate Bill 376 by Senator Schaefer, the 48th, and others. The bill to enactment Article 34, Chapter 1 of Title 10 of the OCGA relating to identity theft so as to prohibit consumer credit reporting agencies from charging a fee for placing or removing a security freeze on a consumer's account for other purposes. Mr. President, the House offers the following amendment. Amend SB 376 by adding after account on line 3 the following. To amend Chapter 3 of Title 10 of the OCGA relating to notes and other evidences of debt and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 48th.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, the underlying Senate Bill 376 was the bill we passed unanimously that eliminates the fees for freezing and unfreezing your credit file. The House amendment clarifies that banks chartered by the United States territory of the Virgin Islands can issue letters of credit in the state of Georgia. I have done some research on that today and have been assured by the banking department that that is not a substantive change in law and that they could likely already do it without this amendment. Urge your favorable consideration of this motion.
All those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary will unlock the machine. On the motion, the ayes are 51, the nays are 0, and the Senate has agreed. Chair recognizes Senator from the 9th. 673.
Tell me if I get this right, Casey. I know that.
Who is that? Chair recognizes Senator from the 9th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate agree to the House amendment to the to the Senate substitute to HB 673 as amended.
Read the caption.
HB 673 by Representative Carson, 46 and others, the bill to be titled enacted in Title 40 of the OSGA relating to motor vehicles and traffic so as to prohibit actions which distract a driver while operating a motor vehicle and for other purposes. Amendment 1 by Senator McCune, the 29th and others, offers the following amendment. Amend House Amendment 6 to the HB 673 by deleting on line 157 by replacing the period and quotation mark with colon and for other purposes. Amendment 2 by Senator McCune, the 29th and others, offers the following amendment. Amend the House Amendment to HB 673 by replacing line 147 with 158 on line 1 by replacing lines 3 through 5 with the following. 2, any person appearing before a court for a first offense of violating paragraph 1 of subsection C and for other purposes. Amendment 3 by Senator Cowser, the 46th and others, offers the following amendment. Amend the House Amendment to HB 673 by deleting lines 3 through 5 and replacing them with the following. 2, any person appearing before a court for a first offense of violating paragraph 1 of subsection C and for other purposes. Amendment 3A by Senator Martin of the 9th and others offers the following amendment. Amend Senate Bill Amendment 3 to the House Amendment to HB 673 by on line 3, strike offense and replace it with charge and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 9th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to present this agreement as amended. There were a few issues with how we sent it away to the House. We have fixed that with the help of Majority Leader Calzert. Basically, at this point, we still will allow a free first time as long as you've equipped your vehicle. If you can show the court you've equipped your vehicle, you will be shown not guilty. And then we clarified to say that that person shall affirm that they have not used that before. So that's what we're doing here. My amendment, which should be coming to your desk very soon, changes on line 3 of the amendment. It deletes the word offense and changes that to charge. So it will be their first charge rather than offense. And then secondly, on lines 7 through 9, it removes the upon adjudication pursuant to this paragraph, the court shall forward a record to the Department of Driver Services. I ask for your favorable consideration. I have agreement with the leader, and we are good to go. We can send this over for an agree in the House.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 46th for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the Senator yield?
Of course, Mr. Leader.
Just to make sure everybody's on the same page, last night we had the amendment that allowed a person to show that they had modified their behavior by purchasing hands-free equipment or show that they had it and avoiding that first conviction. And this amendment, we basically give some assurance that nobody can game the system by making them swear under oath in court that they have never done this before. They only get one chance to do this.
That's correct, Mr. Leader, and I appreciate you working with us and getting to a point where we agreed on it. And it's a much better place than we were yesterday.
And am I also correct that on your amendment, which I have co-signed 3A, that the prosecutors are in agreement that it clarifies and makes it more enforceable and more palatable to the law enforcement community?
They are much more agreeable to it.
Thank you for your cooperation and good work on this, Senator.
If there are no other questions, I'll yield the well.
Chair recognizes Senator from 29th. 29th. Yeah.
Mr. President, I had offered Amendment 1 that would have added an exception for when someone comes to a complete stop, and Amendment 2 that would have added to that some of the language that's been discussed earlier. I am in agreement with the discussion that's been had earlier about Amendment 3, so at the appropriate time I'll return to my seat and ask to be recognized to withdraw Amendment 1 and Amendment 2. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Senator from the 31st, what purpose you rise?
Mr. President, I have Amendment 2, but I do not have the other amendments. Are they in the process of being handed out, or are they in the book? Or?
They're right. They're all being handed out right now.
Thank you.
Amendment 1 was in the book, however. All right, Chair recognizes Senator from the 29th.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent to withdraw Amendment number 1.
Just one? Without objection, Amendment 1 has been withdrawn. Chair recognizes Senator for 29th.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent to withdraw Amendment number 2.
Without objection, Amendment number 2 will be withdrawn. That will put us at 3 and 3A. Everyone should have 3 and 3A. I'll give you a moment for those to be passed out and looked at. All All right, the question now is on Amendment 3A. 3A. Is there objection? Without objection, 3A has been adopted. Question now is on Amendment 3 as amended. Is there objection? Without objection, 3 as amended is adopted. Now, we are in a posture to agree to the House amendment to the Senate substitute as amended. All those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary will unlock the machine. We're going to take up 2 conference committees that are ready. Senator from the 52nd, I think, is presenting one. And the other one, it looks like, is being presented by the senator from the 18th. Conference committee. We'll do 329 first. On the motion, the yeas are 52 and the nays are 1. And the Senate has agreed to the House amendment to the Senate substitute. Chair recognizes Senator from the 52nd for a motion.
Mr. President, the Committee of Conference on House Bill 329 recommend that both the Senate and the House Representatives recede from their positions and that the attached Committee of Conference substitute to House Bill 329 be adopted.
Read the caption.
Committees of Conference report on HB 329. The Committees of Conference on HB 329 recommend that both the Senate and the House of Representatives recede from their positions and that the attached Committees of Conference substitute to HB 329 be adopted, submitted by Senator Huffstetler, 52nd, and others. Committees of Conference substitute HB 329, bill titled enactment, Chapter 5C, Title 40 of the OCGA, relating to alternative ad valorem tax on motor vehicles, so as to change the manner for determining fair market value of motor vehicles subject to the tax and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Chair recognizes Senator from 52nd.
I'll move quickly, but everybody does need to understand that this is the TAVT bill 327. You heard a lot of things the other day from schools and cities and counties that weren't happy with this. This has been worked out in conference. It will reduce the rate to 3% for those moving to Georgia, the Welcome to Georgia, and it will remove the automatic trigger increase of up to 9%, make some minor adjustments, some technical fixes. Now the new and the used car dealers are in support of this. The out-of-state, of course, is in support of it. ACCG and GMA are both in support of this. The schools are in support of it. MARTA has been put back in. I know that was an issue for some. They're in support of it. The charter buses for hire in support. The antiques, the divorcees even, well, I'm not going to say they're happy, but at least now they only pay 0.5% instead of 7%. So that's been satisfied. All this has been worked out, and if there's no questions, I'll yield the well.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 10th for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would the Senator yield?
I'll yield.
Senator, let me commend you for working with all these different organizations and putting together a bill in conference committee that makes a lot of sense to a lot of people interested. And I just want to say that I stand in support of your conference committee and the work that you all have done in your committee.
Well, I appreciate your comments, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention that the senator from the 56 did a lot of work on this and getting us to this point.
Chair recognizes Senator from 36 for a
Thank
question.
you, Mr. President. Senator Yield.
I'll yield.
Senator, is there any possible way that we could ever anticipate having a session of the Georgia General Assembly without having some version of this bill before us? I think we're at 6 years now and counting.
It started the year before I got here. I just did want to
That's-
mention that, but I think this will be continuing for years.
It might be on some folks' tombstones if we keep on at this rate. Isn't that the case? Thank you.
No further questions, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President. I urge your support.
The senators moving for the adoption of the conference committee report of House Bill 329. All those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the adoption of the committee or the conference committee report, the yeas are 49, the nays are 4, and the Senate has adopted the conference committee report. Chair recognizes Senator from the 19th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate agree to the conference committee report to House Bill 906.
Secretary will read.
Committees of conference report on HB 906. The committees of conference on HB 906 are recommending that both the Senate and the House of Representatives receive from their position that the attached committees of conference substitute to HB 906 be adopted, submitted by Senator Kennedy of the 18th and others. Committees of conference substitute to HB 906, a bill titled an act to amend Chapter 11, Title 15, Code Section 49580 of the OCJ relating to the juvenile code and powers and duties of the Department of Human Services, respectively, so as to allow the Division of Family and Children's Services of the Department of Human Services to offer extended care youth services to youth between 18 and 21 years of age and other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 19th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. This body has done many things this year to support foster families and to support adoption. This is the culmination in this conference committee report to House Bill 906. Section 1 of this bill is essentially verbatim House Bill 972 that this chamber passed earlier this evening. Passed it unanimously, I believe. It also adds in House Bill 906. House Bill 906, what that says is that we offer, it does two things, I'm sorry. It's an open records fix for legislative and executive branch matter to make sure that we give DFACS foster families the same protection on their information as we do to state employees. Thank you again. I think, again, this is the culmination to many things we've done for foster care and adopted families in this state, and I appreciate the Senate's support for the past 2 years on these measures. Mr. President, if there are no questions, I'll yield the well.
Thank you, Senator. Senators move for the adoption of the conference committee report of House Bill 906. All those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the adoption of the conference committee report, the yeas are 52 and the nays are 0, and the conference committee report has been adopted. Chair recognizes Senator from the 1st.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate agree to the House amendment to the Senate substitute to House Bill 657.
Read the caption.
House Bill 657 by Representative Petraeus, the 166, and others. Bill entitled enactment in Part 1 of Article 4, Chapter 11, Title 16 of the OCGA, relating to general provisions regarding dangerous instrumentalities and practices so as to make it the unlawful, the knowing, and intentional provision of any firearm for the purpose of providing such firearm to any person known to be on probation as a felony first offender or have been convicted of felony for other purposes. That concludes the order.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 1st.
Thank you, Mr. President. I bring back to you House Bill 657. This was the bill in which if you knowingly gave a gun to a felon, then you could be convicted of a felony. And I promised the senator from the 31st, if indeed his concern about a person who is a felon who had been pardoned by the United States president or by the pardons and paroles, if they had had their rights restored, then you could give a gun to that person who had their rights restored. And that was corrected in the House, and that was the only change. I ask for your favorable consideration as you had done before. Thank you very much.
Senator has moved. All those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed no. Secretary will unlock the machine. Senator from the 28th will stand by. On the motion, the yeas are 49, the nays are 1. The Senators agree to the House amendment to the Senate substitute. Chair recognizes Senator from the 28th.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate agree to the House Bill 65.
Read the caption. 65.
HB 65 by Representative Peak of the 141st and others. The bill will be titled enactment code section 31-2A-18 of the OCGA relating to the establishment of the low THC oil patient registry and for other purposes. Mr. President, the House offers the following amendment. Amend the substitute HB 65 replacing lines 1 through 66 with the following to amend Article 1 of Chapter 2A of Title 31 of the OCGA relating to general provisions relative to the Department of Public Health so as to provide for the creation of the Joint Study Commission on Low THC Medical Oil Access and for other purposes. That concludes the order.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 28th.
Mr. President, members of this body, I know we're rushing through bills right now, but there's some things I need to say that's going to take a little time. So y'all going to have to bear with me. And I want to tell y'all a story of my first bill. My first bill last year, as y'all well know, had to do with hearing aids. And I fought hard to get that through the committee process and get that thing out of this Senate as it passed 55-1. And it goes over to the House. And over in the House, all the language was stripped, and it came back. And I didn't pitch a fit. I didn't get angry. I acted like a statesman, like we're supposed to. And the reason is because I understand the value of relationships. As I've talked to y'all before and told you all, the fundamentals in this business are relationships, communication, and timing. Relationships is the most important thing we do. But earlier today, I witnessed something over in the house. And quite honestly, I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed to be a member of anybody under this Capitol. It was sad. I witnessed a child calling names, pitching a fit because he didn't get his way. And we don't always get our way. But it's important we don't trash each other today. And it doesn't matter what party, doesn't matter what chamber, because that relationship we will need tomorrow. But the member that trashed members of this body and the president of this body, he's better than that. He's an Army Ranger. He's a state house member. He's better than that. And today we're going to prove we're better than that. So I commend the Lieutenant Governor. I commend this body for allowing this bill to come back and have a vote, rising above politics and doing what's right. And I want to remind everybody, especially citizens up there, that we're human too. We're allowed to change our mind. We're allowed to grow as people. We're allowed to grow as statesmen. And I've witnessed attitudes change around this subject and around this issue, not just in this body, but throughout this Capitol and throughout this state. And the childish antics that I witnessed today are a nice reminder of the importance of removing the politics from this issue. And that's why I present HB 65. Now, when it left this chamber, we had removed language and we put in our joint study commission. And the fact that it's joint is so important. It's important that both bodies come together to figure out this issue. So it went over there, and they added back in PTSD, and they've added in the intractable pain. And I support what they did. And I hope you'll support it too. With that, Mr. President, I will yield for questions. Thank you, Mr. President.
All those in favor of the senator's motion will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary will unlock the machine. On the motion, the yeas are 38 and the nays are 14, and the Senate has agreed to the House amendment to the Senate substitute. Chair recognizes Senator on the 17th.
Mr. President, I ask for unanimous consent to remove House Resolution 993 from the table.
No. Wrong one.
House Bill 185 from the table.
No, actually, I thought I misunderstood what was most important to you. I thought SB 263. Agree?
Ask for unanimous consent to remove Senate Bill 263 from the table.
Chair recognizes Senator from 17.
I move the Senate agree to the House substitute to Senate Bill 263.
Read the caption.
Senate Bill 263 by Senator Jeffries the 17th, the bill to be entitled "An Act to Incorporate the City of Eagles Landing and for other purposes." Amendment 1 by Senator Jackson the second and others offers the following amendment. Amend the House substitute to SB 263 by inserting after Charter on line 1176 and all electors of the city of Stockbridge. Amendment 2 by Senator Orrick of 36 and others offers the following amendment. Amend the House substitute to SB 263 by striking real and on line 927. Amendment 3 by Senator Parent of the 42nd offers the following amendment. Amend the House substitute to SB 263 by striking the on line 1017 and inserting in lieu thereof the following. On or after the time that bonds incurred by the city of Stockbridge, which are in existence at the time of the referendum provided for and by section 7.13 of this charter are retired, Amendment 4 by Senator Jones of the 10th and others offers the following amendment. Amend the House substitute to SB 263 by striking revenue on line 1023, inserting in lieu thereof the following. On or after time that bonds incurred by the city of Stockbridge, which are in existence at the time of the referendum provide for section 7.13 of this charter, are retired revenue. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Chair recognizes Senator from 17th to speak to the motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. Earlier this year, we debated Senate Bills 262 and 263. Senate Bill 263 over to the House, and this bill allows for the citizens in Northern Henry County to vote to form the City of Eagles Landing. There was some discussion in the House about a provision in our bill that we passed that would allow for a homestead exemption, and whether or not that required a 2/3 vote. The House decided to take that language out of the bill, and the bill is back over here for an agree. That's the only change to the bill. And there's a letter put on your desk confirming that taking that out, there are no constitutional issues with the passages of this bill. And I know the hour is late. We spent a lot of time discussing this before. And I ask for your favorable consideration of Senate Bill 263. Now I'll yield for any questions.
Senator from the 1st, you have a question?
Well, I did not have a question, Mr. President. At the appropriate time, I'd like to call the question.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 6th for a question.
Will you give for a series of questions? I'll try to do it quickly.
Yeah.
Okay. Senator, isn't it true that Legislative Council has determined that the vote on incorporation cannot take place in the May 2018 general primary?
And that's true, and that's why in the bill, actually, it's set for the November general election instead.
And isn't it true that Section 5.11, subsection E of the Eagles Landing Charter states that if the vote on incorporation does not occur on May 2018, municipal elections for the newly created city cannot take place until March 19th of 2019?
That's not true. The bill actually says in the part dealing with the election that the election will take place in the November general election.
I understand for the creation of the city, but I'm talking about municipal elections that come after the creation of the city in terms of the referendum.
Oh, okay.
Okay? Right? So, all right?
I'm not sure.
All right.
Putting the cart before the horse. The
Right.
citizens will get to vote this fall whether or not to form this city.
Right. So they'll,
if this passes.
they'll vote in November, but then municipal elections can't be held until March of 2019, correct?
Okay.
And isn't it true that pursuant to SB 262 that previously passed this chamber, that the area that will be the new city of Eagles Landing would be de-annexed from Stockbridge and be incorporated as of January 1st of 2019, correct?
That may be true.
Okay, and so isn't it true that once Eagles Landing is incorporated as of January 1st, 2019, any existing municipal services provided by Stockbridge would cease to be available to the new residents of Eagles Landing from January 1st, 2019 through at least March 20th of 2019?
I'm not sure if that's true, but I have a good answer on that. The only thing the city of Stockbridge does is trash service, and so that's the only service that's currently being provided by the city.
Senator, isn't it true that those services include code enforcement, business permits, building permits, zoning, sanitation, and possibly water?
Well, it does not include water. No, it does include sanitation. But Senator, this is the way I look at it. The arguments you're making to be made in an election for the citizens to make this decision this fall, they can consider that when they're deciding whether they go to that ballot box or not to adopt and form a new city in Northern Henry County. It's better for them to make that decision versus us debating this here tonight.
Just a couple more questions.
I'll take two more. I know the hour's late.
Is the sponsor aware that in Stockbridge, all business licenses, including alcohol licenses, expire on December 31st of each year?
I'm not sure.
And
Again,
so,
these are things that the citizens can consider this fall.
And so the city of Eagles Landing won't even be able to get alcohol licenses until after March of 2019?
I'm not sure. Something we can work with the county on if that is an issue. Again, these are things that can be discussed by the citizens when this goes for a ballot, on the ballot this fall. I go back to us, when I first presented this bill. We can debate whether or not this is best for the citizens or the citizens themselves to make the decision for themselves at the ballot box. And with that, I'll yield the well.
Senator from, no, I'm gonna let Senator from the 10th speak.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of this body. First of all, let me thank the Lieutenant Governor for giving me this opportunity to speak about a city that I represent 99.99% of. Had the senator from the 17th taken more questions, I would have asked him about some of the structural deficiencies that's been identified in this particular bill. As a matter of fact, to correct some of those structural deficiencies, I had prepared a series of amendments. And I know, colleagues, there is a motion to agree. However, without the proper vetting of this bill, and I believe my colleague said that it had been debated before, I want to remind him that when this bill came to this floor, there was no questions that were taken regarding Senate Bill 263. And to me, that was really problematic because as this bill is going over to the House, they found out that when we voted that we should have had at least a 2/3 vote, since when this bill came out here, it had the homestead exemption in it. Not only was that issue problematic, but anytime you have a homestead exemption, you're required to run an ad, an advertisement. That's another issue dealing with this particular legislation that's problematic, and you can't correct that by amending this bill as it was sent over to the House. In essence, this bill never ever should have been introduced. This is an issue that's critical to 28,000 residents of the city of Stockbridge, half of which, almost 9,500, is going to be de-annexed without an opportunity to vote. I want to remind my colleagues in the short time that I have to speak that there's about 40% loss in revenue to this city, which we know is going to drive this city into ruin. As a matter of fact, there's a letter that I put on everybody's desk from the bond agency. And if you read that letter, that bond agency says not only will this city be impacted by this particular legislation, which is unprecedented, but every city in this state would be impacted. And somebody should ask the question, why is that appropriate? It's appropriate because we are changing how we govern our cities. This unprecedented action of de-annexing property only to re-annex it into another city is actions that this body has never, ever taken before. And I hope somebody in here, other than myself and a few of my colleagues, understand the nature of what this legislation does and the impact that it's going to have, not just on the city of Stockbridge, but the impact that it's going to have on every city in the great state of Georgia. Folks, this is not the end of this legislation. This is just the beginning. As was stated earlier, the legislation called for a ballot in May. We now know that ballot cannot happen until November. This issue is going to stay out there in the public domain all during the election year. And I don't know if this body would want to deal with this kind of divisive, racist issue surrounding the Voting Rights Amendment at a time when we're all trying to get reelected. There's something that I would like to say to our governor, who I think has done the yeoman's work, and if he was the CEO, he would certainly be the CEO of the year in managing this great state. But my message to the governor is quite simple. Your name may not be on the ballot, Governor, but your legacy is on the ballot. And I pray that this governor, in the event this bill makes it out of this chamber, will do the right thing and veto this legislation. I also want to let the mayor and the city council and the 28,000 residents of Stockbridge know that the senator that represents them tried to make the case as best as he could. He presented evidence related to the impact this legislation would have on this city's finances, that I went out of the way to kind of share as much of this information with my colleagues. However, I think it's important that the residents of this great city know that the only reason why I may have fallen short is because some in here made this issue more than about taking away from a city, but they made it a red versus blue issue or a Republican versus Democratic issue when it shouldn't be. Mr. President, I am a person who prides himself on being a part of the community, on serving the community, and representing my constituents with the best service that I can offer. But I find it very, very difficult during this time when I'm trying to share this information that's been given to me about the impact of this city, not just from the bond agency, but also from Carl Vinson Institute, how this legislation is going to destroy this community. Not only will it destroy the community, but it's going to pit neighbor against neighbor. It's going to pit black against white. It's going to destroy the integrity of this area that we've known and that I've known and that I call home. We have a serious problem. If we are in fact the greatest deliberative body in this state, then I would certainly hope and pray that members of this body would give pause, that they would think for a moment before they push that green button regarding this particular bill. Folks, there's another way. We drew maps. We drew more districts. We worked with the other side to try and make them inclusive into the city. There is another way. They simply could have drawn a city without de-annexing property from this particular city. That's another way. There's so many options and so many tools that are available to this city that, quite frankly, we've not paid much attention to. And I don't know why. I don't know why this legislation has made it this far in this General Assembly. I really don't know why. There's countless conflicts of interest. There's countless examples where the community have risen up and said, this is not what we want. I've not received a single letter from anyone in the Eagles Landing community that I know, and I happen to have a lot of friends that live in the community that said this is a good idea. As a matter of fact, it's been just the opposite. And to my colleagues, I don't know if I can convey the impression that this action has had on me. The only way I know how to do that is just to imagine what it would be like if your city And on this folder I put on your desk, this is a list of cities that all passed resolutions in support of Stockbridge keeping the city intact. When I look down this list, I see cities from all over this state. And they've all spoken and passed resolutions and said this is the wrong thing to do. This is absolutely the wrong thing to do. And I would encourage my colleagues, and not just my Democratic colleagues, but also my Republican colleagues, to look at this list. As a matter of fact, when I scan this list, I see cities from just about every district in this chamber. And to me, that should certainly get someone's attention and highlight the inequity in this legislation. And not just in this legislation, but the companion legislation that's gone through the House. One of the bills that I introduced, one of the amendments I introduced, simply said, let all the citizens vote. Not just those few that's been excluded, but let the other 95, let the other citizens that remain in the city vote as to whether or not the city should be incorporated. And to me, that is just common sense. Another amendment that I introduced said, if you do not want, as you stated, a property tax, then write it in the legislation. Folks, when the homestead exemption was moved from this bill, in my opinion, it made this bill far worse. The homestead exemption would have protected veterans and senior citizens. I've gotten calls from plenty, and a whole lot of veterans and senior citizens in this area that says, I don't want my taxes to go up. That's what we're dealing with in Senate Bill 263 right now. By removing that homestead exemption, we've created this opportunity where this city will impose taxes and bonds and revenue bonds and GO bonds, and somebody has to pay for it. But that homestead exemption would have allowed an exemption for the elderly, and it certainly would have allowed an exemption for veterans. That's what the House did to this bill. And to me, that's not something that should be taken lightly. As a veteran myself, I understand the sacrifice that many of us have made. So you're taking me out of a city that has this homestead exemption without my approval, putting me in another city that does not have this homestead exemption. Somebody in here should know that there's no logic in making that happen to anybody. The only thing that's going to have is an effect on those members of our community that have served admirably and those members of our community that have aged in population. Folks, senators, members of Stockbridge, members of the Henry County that I love so very much, I wish that I had something that I could share with my colleagues up here that would get them to understand the true impact, not the fact that half of the revenue is gone and the bonds, in fact, may be called, which will eventually run this city into ruin, or the fact that those left in the city may have to go out and pay for those that left the city. I had a simple amendment that was related to the bond saying that this $15 million in indebtedness that Stockbridge still has on its books, that the other city couldn't issue an indebtedness until that was paid off. Folks, I certainly hope you understand the totality of this particular legislation. And I really mean the totality of this particular legislation. It's not just one item that's being impacted. It's not just one citizen, not just one class of people that's being impacted. There are so many citizens that almost every last one of them are going to be touched in the event this bill passes. And I don't believe that our governor really wants that to happen to any city that he represents.
Time.
Thank you, Mr. President. And if I could just wrap it up, I would certainly hope that anyone running for elected office statewide wouldn't want that to happen as well. And I would encourage you, look at this information that I shared with you. Do what's right. Folks, this list says it all. And as the kids in Parkland have said, enough is enough. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Senators move that we agree to the House substitute. All those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary will unlock the machine. No, the amendments are not in order because the motion is to agree to the House substitute, not to agree to the House substitute as amended. And that takes precedent. Chair recognizes Senator from 36. What purpose
Thank you,
you
Mr.
rise?
President. Parliamentary inquiry.
State your
Isn't it
inquiry.
true that you could vote red on this bill and much work could be done, next year come back with something that withstands scrutiny? Isn't that the case? Instead of people trying to run bills through here just for their re-election purposes?
Senator has great passion for which she speaks. On the motion, the yeas are 33 and the nays are 19, and the Senate has agreed to the substitute. Chair recognizes Senator from the 13th.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate adhere to its substitute to House Bill 605 and that a conference committee be appointed.
The senator is, read the caption.
House Bill 605, Resolution Pence of the 180th and others, a bill entitled Enactment Article 2, Chapter 3, Title 9 of the GA relating to specific periods of limitations as to change provision relating to the revival of certain claims involving childhood sexual abuse and for other purposes. That concludes the order.
The senator has moved for a conference committee to be appointed. Prior to doing so, for the record, The House, we received this bill at 10:47. 10:47. We have a 2-hour rule in play in the Senate. The House did not act in time, which they know our rules as well, for us to consider this bill. The Senator is asking for a conference committee, but before he can be granted a conference committee, the rule will need to be waived for the 2 hours in order for this to occur. So the Senator, your motion, first motion would be this, to waive the 2-hour rule.
Mr. President, I ask that the 2-hour rule be waived.
So the Senate
By
can take
unanimous
it.
consent.
There is objection by the Senator from the 31st. All those in favor of waiving the rule, the 2-hour rule, regarding a conference committee report for House Bill 605 will rise, stand, and be counted if you are in favor of waiving the rule. Reverse. On the motion to waive the rule, the yeas are 19 and the nays are 20. Chair recognizes Senator from 13.
Mr. President, I ask for reconsideration.
All those in favor of reconsideration will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary, unlock the machine. Chair recognizes Senator from 31st.
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Mr. President, isn't it true that the House can always recede from its position and we can get this bill passed tonight?
That is an accurate assessment. Chair recognizes Senator from the 42nd.
Mr. President, parliamentary inquiry. Isn't it true that the bill that we passed earlier does not do nearly enough for victims, and we need to give our senator a chance to negotiate and improve this legislation?
Senator has great passion for which she speaks. On the motion for reconsideration, the yeas are 26 and the nays are 27, and the motion has lost. Senator from the 17th, you're recognized now for 993. For the
Mr. President,
taking
I
off
ask for
table.
unanimous consent to remove House Resolution 993 from the table.
Removing H.R. 993 off the table. Is there objection? Without objection, the resolution is moved off the table. Secretary will read.
House Resolution 993 by Representative Stration, 104th, and others. A resolution proposing an amendment to the Constitution so as to create a business court with statewide jurisdiction for other purposes. Mr. President, The Senate Committee on Judiciary offers the following substitute H.R. 993, a resolution proposing an amendment to the Constitution so as to create a statewide business court with statewide jurisdiction for use under certain circumstances for other purposes. That concludes the order.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I bring to you House Resolution 993. Our Court Reform Council recommended that we ask the citizens of the state to amend the Constitution to create a statewide business court. You may recall the state judiciary, our Chief Justice also mentioned this as well. And many of us that do civil litigation will tell you when you have a complex civil case, you go to some courts and they're busy dealing with divorces and TPOs and a lot of criminal matters they have to deal with. It's hard to get the attention on those cases deserve. What this bill will do is allow the citizens to decide whether or not we set a framework to have judges with the expertise to handle these kind of matters, appointed to handle these kind of cases for us. As the #1 state in the country in which to do business, it's important we have a court system that our businesses can get through. We had a couple of changes in the Senate with this bill. We made sure that if you have a court already set up in your jurisdiction like Gwinnett and Fulton, you can keep those courts. You also can create your own superior court. Your own superior court can create a business court and have that work there. We also confirmed that the trial of these cases will take place in the local jurisdiction. We also have confirmed that we, the House and the Senate Judiciary Committees, will get a chance to actually confirm the appointees for these judges. And this has been endorsed by most of our business community out there. We have the NFIB and Georgia Chamber made these big issues for us this year as well. And with that, Mr. President, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
No questions, Senator. Questions
yield the
on the
well.
adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection? Without objection, committee substitute is adopted. Is any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is there objection? Agreed. Report of committee which fail will pass the bill. All those in favor of the bill vote aye. Those opposed no. Secretary will unlock the machine. On the adoption of the constitutional amendment, the yeas are 46 and nays are 17, and the Senate has adopted. Chair will recognize Senator from the 14th. 14th. Are you wishing to be recognized to? 315. This is 315. Is that what you wanted?
Yeah, we're going to agree.
Huh?
Yeah,
Yeah, go.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate agree to House substitute to Senate Bill 315.
Read the caption.
Senate Bill 315 by Senator Thompson on the 14th and others, a bill to enact amendment Part 1 of Article 6 of Chapter 9, Title 16 of the OCGA relating to computer crimes as to create the new crime of unauthorized computer access and for other purposes. Mr. President, the House offers the following substitute to SB 315, a bill to enact amendment Part 1 of Article 6 of Chapter 9, Title 16 of the OCGA relating to computer crimes so as to create the new crime of unauthorized computer access and for other purposes. That concludes the order.
Chair recognizes Senator from 14. I'm sorry. Did you move to agree to the House substitute? You're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. We passed this bill unanimously out of here. This is our cyber bill. And if there's no questions, I ask unanimously to move it again. And I yield the well.
All those in favor of the Senator's motion will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary unlock the machine. Senator from the 18th will stand by. On the motion, the ayes are 42 and the nays are 7, and the Senate has agreed. Chair recognizes Senator from the 18th.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate agree to the House substitute for Senate Bill.
No House bill.
House Bill 695.
Read the caption. While he's finding the bill, Senator from the 19th will stand by to move a bill off the table, and the Senator from the 21st will be doing the same momentarily. Read the caption.
House Bill 695 by Representative Epps of the 144th and others, a bill entitled enacting Code Section 4286 of the OCJ relating to special license plates, promoting and supporting certain beneficial projects, agency funds, or nonprofit corporations, so as to establish a specialty license plate honoring Georgia's working force and the Georgia Forestry Foundation for other purposes. Mr. President, the House offers the following amendment. Amend the Senate amendment to HB 695 by deleting line 1 through 7 and inserting in lieu thereof the following. Amend HB 695 by deleting lines 1 through 21 and inserting in lieu thereof the following. To amend Chapter 2 of Title 40 of the OCJ relating to registration, licensing of motor vehicles and for other purposes. That concludes the order.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 18th.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill, House Bill 695, is really the Senate bill that I brought to you, which was the tag bill or the license plate bill honoring Georgia's working forest. What the House did was add one thing to it, which requires that all license plates issued by government vehicles shall be marked in a manner such as to indicate the specific type of governmental unit operating in the vehicle. This bill, this provision says that the commissioners shall be authorized to grant a waiver of that requirement of that subsection and such that the regular Georgia license plates may be used on those type vehicles. This has the support of the Department of Revenue and the Governor's Office. And I encourage your support for this bill.
All those in favor on the Senator's motion, vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary unlock the machine. All right, so correction on what I said a moment ago. Senator from the 40th. 40th. No. Is that a disagree? Senator from, hold on, Senator from the 14th, you have. On the motion, the yeas are 47, the nays are 0, and Senate has agreed. Chair can I send the 14th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate disagree to the House substitute to Senate Bill 403.
Is there objection? Without objection, Senate has disagreed. Chair recognizes Senator from the 40th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate agree to the House amendment to the Senate substitute SB 430 as amended.
Read the caption.
SB 430 by Senators Brass of the 28th and others, a bill be titled enactment Title 15, Chapter 2 of Title 21, and Chapter 5 of Title 48 of the CGA relating to courts, primaries, and election generally, and an ad valorem taxation of property, respectively, so as to modify the compensation of various local government officials and for other purposes. Amendment 1 by Senator Miller of the 40th offers the following amendment. Amend the House Amendment to SB 430 by deleting it in its entirety and substituting lieu thereof a bill be titled and act to amend Chapter 5 of Title 36 of the OCA relating to organization of county government so as to update the compensation of local government officials and for other purposes. That concludes the order.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 40th.
Ladies and gentlemen, this bill, the House would not give the 5% raise that was in the bill for a lot of officials here in our county. And so there's been a substitute drafted. I live in DeKalb County, as many of you know, and our commissioners recently granted themselves a 60% raise. I think a lot of the citizenry views that as absurd, and this bill simply cuts that raise back to 10% in round numbers. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
All those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary will unlock the machine. I would like to ask the senator from the 48th, please approach. Senator from the 27th, please approach. And senator from the 29th. 29th, you approach after you vote. Senator from the 48th, 27th, and 29th. Senator from the 42nd.
Isn't it true that we should vote right on this? This is a duly elected government in DeKalb County. We've given them the power to make this change. This has been already attempted and failed earlier this session, and this should be a red vote.
Senator has requested. On the motion, the yeas are 32, the nays are 19, and the Senate has adopted the amendment. Okay. Let me have the Senate's attention for a moment. We have 3 individuals that are our colleagues in the Senate that are not coming back next year, and we would love to take a moment to recognize them with a resolution and give them an opportunity to address the body. Secretary will read the resolutions. All 3, yeah. Yeah.
Senate Resolution 1166 by Senator Miller of the 49th and others, a resolution recognizing and commending State Senator Joshua McCoon on his outstanding public service and for other purposes. Senate Resolution 1167 by Senator Miller of the 49th and others, a resolution recognizing and commending Senator David Schaefer on his many years of service to his community and state and for other purposes. And Senate Resolution 1168 by Senator Miller of the 49th and others, a resolution recognizing and commending State Senator Michael Williams on his outstanding public service and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? The chair is none. The resolution is adopted. Senators, let me have your attention, if you would, quieten down for just a moment. First, I'd like to recognize the senator from the 48th to address the body.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, I remember the day that I was sworn in 16 years ago like it was yesterday. I remember standing there at that podium with my wife and my daughter, who was just a 3 or 4 month old infant at my side, and my daughter's entire life has unfolded in the time that I've served in the state Senate. About the time she first walked was about the time that I felt comfortable giving a speech from the well without notes. In 2010, I came very close to leaving the General Assembly to run for Congress. John Linder had stepped down, and I remember the lieutenant governor was at the Republican Party meeting where Linder announced his retirement and called me and said, "You ought to run for Congress." And it was a Saturday morning, and all Saturday I fielded telephone calls and went to bed Saturday night and woke up Sunday morning believing that I was going to run for Congress. And we had a family meeting that afternoon. It was really a conversation with my daughter, Ellie, who was about 9 years old. And I remember I started that meeting by saying to her, "Your dad is going to run for Congress." And she was like, "Yes." She had no idea what it meant, but she had sensed the excitement in the room, in the house, and she wanted to join in it. And I said to her, I said, "There's only one problem." I said, "I'm going to have to be gone from Monday to Thursday." And all of a sudden, her enthusiasm disappeared, and she got this very serious look on her face. And after about 30 seconds of thinking, she looked at me and she said, "That'll be all right, Dad." She said, "What week will you be gone?" And at that moment, I knew that I was not going to be running for Congress. But I have enjoyed tremendously the 16 years that I've served in the state Senate. I do want to acknowledge the loves of my life, my wife Lee and my daughter Ellie and my mom Sarah, who have loved me and supported me and taken care of me and suffered for me. I'm profoundly grateful to them for their support, and I have enjoyed tremendously my service with each one of you. Thank you so much for this resolution. My profound thanks to each one of you.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Now let me ask Senator from the 29th.
So this will be the last time you have to hear from me. Exactly, right? You know, the book of Ecclesiastes talks about to everything there is a season, and this marks the end of a season in my life. Today marks the 330th legislative day that I have entered this chamber as a member. I find myself measuring things in days ever since I lost my mother to cancer in 2015. There were 77 days from the day we received her diagnosis to the day that she passed away. You know, the only resource we really cannot replace is our time. So where you invest that most scarce of resources is, in my view, the most important decision you make. Your life is basically the aggregation of all these individual decisions of how you choose to invest your time. For me, I believe my investment of time as a member of this body has yielded a wonderful return. This Senate during my time here has led on the most important issues of our day. This Senate insisted on real ethics reform that has changed the culture of our Capitol. It has led the way on protecting the right of free exercise and free speech, even with the divide that existed in our party on these fundamental questions. This Senate has passed multiple times legislation to protect public safety and voter integrity through distinguishing driver's licenses. It has passed a constitutional amendment designating English the official language of state government. We have also adopted transparency measures, most recently live streaming our committee meetings, which are keeping good faith with the people we represent. In short, I believe in my time as a member, this Senate has consistently kept faith with the ideals of limited government and protecting fundamental individual liberty, even when those efforts have not ultimately produced legislation that has become law. The Senate has been that shining beacon showing the way to a Georgia that is not only prosperous, but one that respects the ideals of human freedom and transparent, open government. While the policy debates and discussions have been incredibly rewarding, the constituent service for me has been the most gratifying. I do want to take this time to say a few thank yous. I want to thank all the people who have worked in my Senate office over the years for their diligent service. It has been a special privilege to work with so many talented people over the last 8 years. A special thanks to the lawyers in our Legislative Counsel's office who diligently turn our ideas into code, sometime with very short notice. Thank you also to the Secretary of the Senate and his staff for answering my many questions over the years with great speed and professionalism. Nancy and Ellen at the page desk have been wonderful to work with over the years in welcoming young people to introduce them to the Senate. I will miss you both. Thank you also to the Capitol Police and the state troopers who do such a tremendous job keeping us safe. I'm very grateful to all our doorkeepers who are such wonderful ambassadors for our state Senate. Donna Neely has been my administrative assistant the 8 years I've served as a senator. She has been a huge blessing to me, and it is difficult for me to imagine getting through these last 8 years without her help. She is simply the best. I do want to say thank you to my wife who can't be here tonight. She is really just the center of my life, and I'm so grateful that she said yes to me. I want to thank my parents, without whom I definitely would not be here today, and particularly my grandmother, my teachers, my brothers, and my stepsister, and my entire family. To my fellow senators, I just say thank you for your friendship. I know I have not always made it easy to be my friend. I'm very grateful for the words of encouragement and support from so many of you and my other friends who work in and around the Capitol. As the memory of the issues of the day fades, the friendships forged with many of you will be the enduring reward of my service here. I'm so grateful for the example of my family, my father and my mother, who have always gave their lives to service. My dad as a assistant district attorney and as a lawyer in private practice, and my mother as a victim service officer for 30 years. I remember when my mother was in the hospital, one of the last times, she had one of her victims who had tracked her down, called on the phone in the hospital room, and I told Mom, you don't need to take that call, but she spent the next 45 minutes counseling that woman and trying to make her feel like things were going to be okay. And if I'm half the person that my father and mother are, I think I've done all right. I just would like to close this evening with a quote from my political hero, a fellow named William Wilberforce, who talked about the importance of faith. I think a lot of times people don't understand why I have been so very focused on issues surrounding that. But what he said was, I would suggest that faith is everyone's business. The advance or decline of faith is so intimately connected to the welfare of a society that it should be of particular interest to a politician. I thank you so much for listening to me one final time. I'm so grateful for your friendship, and I look forward to the days ahead. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you very much. We appreciate you very much. Now I'd like to call upon the senator from the 27th.
I think y'all heard enough from me yesterday, right? Today has been very hard for me for a couple of reasons. I've shared with y'all, my father died when I was younger, and there were two gentlemen that stepped up to fill his role in my life. One of those was my Uncle Buddy, and he passed away yesterday morning. So as I have been grasping with his death, I've also been grasping with the death of my service here in the Senate. So I want to apologize if I looked a little somber over there in my seat, just taking it all in. I was just trying to get my wits about me, because anytime I opened up my mouth, tears started to come out, and I didn't want you guys to see me crying my last day here. But I want y'all to know how much I have thoroughly enjoyed serving with all of you. I know we've had some disagreements, we've had some pretty contentious discussions, and I made a comment in caucus meeting towards the beginning of the session that all of you were my friends beginning the session, and to me, you will all be my friends at the end of this session and even come May 23rd. And I've thoroughly enjoyed my service here. This is a tremendous body of people that I respect, admire, and thank you so much for your friendship, for those that have mentored me, guided me, and helped me along this path. I also want to thank my admin assistants. The very first time I had Sabrina, we were learning the ropes together, so thank you so much, Sabrina. And also Miss Kathleen for her diligent service and all that she's done for me, and particularly the constituents of not just District 27, but around the state. And thank you again for the resolution and for your friendship. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Who's got the conference committee? Chair recognizes Senator from the 21st. Move. Motion.
Motion to adopt the conference committee report for House Bill 930.
Read the caption.
Committees of Conference report on HB 930. The Committees of Conference on HB 930 recommend that both the Senate and the House of Representatives receive from their position that the attached Committees of Conference substitute HB 930 be adopted by Senator Beach of the 21st and others. Committees of Conference substitute to HB 930, a bill be titled Enactment, Chapter 9, Title 32, Chapter 8 of Title 36, Title 48, and Title 50 of the OCGA relating to mass transportation provisions applicable to counties, municipal corporations, and other governmental entities, revenue and taxation, and state government respectively, so as to provide for transit funding and governance for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 21st.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Senators. I'll be quick. This is the regional transit bill that we've been working on for years. This is a great day for Metro Atlanta and the state of Georgia. It creates a regional transit entity in the 13-county Greater region. Each county is able to go with a 1-cent sales tax and then create a unified system that's seamless, efficient, clean, and most of all safe. And I'll just leave it at that. I do want to address one thing. Page 5, a lot of people have asked me, is that the Delta motor fuel tax? It is not. And I'll read what Legislative Counsel gave me. In Clayton, because they first levied the MARTA tax in 2014, in Clayton, the MARTA tax does not get levied on jet fuel at a qualifying airport. This is already in law, and so it is not the Delta jet fuel tax. Mr. President, I'll yield the well if there's no questions.
Senator from Senator from the 46.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Yield?
Yes.
Just want to double check and make sure. Am I right that this allows these counties to select this new SPLOST for transit, but in the event they do that, they are not allowed to also have a transit?
You cannot layer a penny on top of a penny. So if you're already in the TIA, you cannot do the T-SPLOST. You got to pick one or the other.
Thank you.
All those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary will unlock the machine. Senators, all right, everybody needs to give me your attention because we're going to be moving pretty quick because we are stopping at 12 o'clock. Senator from the 7th needs to stand by. $8.98. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 48 and the nays are 6. And this bill, having received Rex constitutional majority, is therefore adopted. Chair recognizes Senator from 7.
Mr. President, I move the Senate agree to House Amendment, Senate substitute House Bill 898.
Read the caption.
House Bill 898, by Representative Powell, 32nd. Others, bill entitled Enactment, Chapter 2, Title 4 of the OCGA relating to registering and licensing of motor vehicles and for other purposes. Mr. President, the House offers the following amendment HB 898 by replacing lines 8 through 10 with the following to participation fleet vehicle registration plan program and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Chair recognizes Senator from 7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, Senate House Bill 898 was the fleet vehicle bill. The only change was the House removed the amendment that was added by the senator from the 13th regarding motorcycles. If there are any questions, I'll yield the well, Mr. President.
Senators moved. All those in favor vote aye. Those opposed no. Secretary, unlock the machine. Senator from the 21st. We'll stand by. This is what I'm. On the motion, the yeas are 51, the nays are 0, and the Senate has agreed. Chair recognizes Senator from the 21st.
I request that
Remove House Bill
House Bill 978 be removed from the table.
From the table. Is there objection? Without objection, read the caption.
House Bill 978 by Representative Nimmer of the 178th, and House Bill entitled an act amending Article 8 of Chapter 6 entitled 40 of the OCA relating to school buses and for other purposes.
Chair recognizes Senator from 21st.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senators, I bring you before you
978.
House Bill 978. This is a school safety bill. It deals with school bus cameras that we already are in law, and it takes it to a flat fee of $250. It also, it's optional, allows school systems to add cameras in the school zones. They have to go 10 miles an hour or above, and to get a ticket, and it's
Questions
optional.
on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection? Chair recognizes Senator from the 46. He has an amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Got me, Mr. President. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This is a amendment that puts the speed gun cameras in line with the red light cameras. On a red light camera, it gets your tag and it shows the owner of the vehicle. In the event it's somebody driving other than the owner, you can simply send in an affidavit to the court and swear you were not driving the vehicle at the time and avoid the fine. This gives identical treatment to somebody that were to get one of these type of tickets in a school zone district, so that you would be able to say, I wasn't driving the vehicle at that time.
Questions
Some of
on
us have several. I'll yield the will.
Question on amendment number 1. Is there objection? There is objection on amendment number 1. There is objection. All those in favor of amendment number 1, rise, stand, and be counted. If you are in favor of amendment 1, rise, stand, and be counted. Is it a local consent? No. Reverse. On the adoption of the amendment, the yeas are 26, the nays are 16, and the amendment has been adopted. Question now is on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection? Chair's none. Committee substitute is adopted or is amended as adopted. All those in favor of the bill vote aye. Those opposed no. Secretary, unlock the machine. Senator from the 19th will stand by. Somebody try to get her local bills. Get her local bills. What needs to happen? On the motion, the yeas are 35 and the nays are 19, and the motion is carried. Chair recognizes Senator from the 19th. Remove a bill from the table.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask that we remove House Bill 951 from the table.
Is there objection? Without objection, read the caption.
House Bill 951 by President Shaw, the 176 and others, bill we titled document entitled 20 of the OCGA relating to education so as to establish the Center for Rural Prosperity and Innovation. Amendment 1 by Senator Tilley of the 19th and others office following amendment HB 951 by
Chair recognizes Senator from the 19th.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a really good bill. It talks about the rural initiatives that we talked about House and Senate both years. 951 establishes the Center for Rural Prosperity. It'll be at a USG institution in rural Georgia. There'll also be a Deputy Commissioner of Economic Development focused on rural Georgia. There's an amendment as well. The amendment removes the university system to make it so that it'll be
Questions on the adoption of the amendment, adoption of. We have adoption of, the questions on the adoption of the amendment. Amendment 1 by the Senator from the 19th. Are you sure you want this amendment? All those in favor of Amendment 1 will rise, stand, and be counted. Rise, stand, and be counted. Do they not know what kills the bill? Reverse. You do know it does not have time to get back to the House and get passed. Fine. Hey, your bill, not mine. On the passage of the amendment, the yeas are 23, the nays are 3. Question now is on the adoption of the committee substitute. No. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? All those in favor of the bill vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary, unlock the machine. No, apparent. Chair recognizes Senator from the 42nd.
President, I move that the Senate agree to the House substitute to SB 478.
SB 478. Read the caption.
SB 478 by Senator Parent of the 42nd and others, a bill entitled an act to create the City of Brookhaven Public Facilities Authority and for other purposes. Mr. President, the House offers the following substitute to SB 478, a bill entitled an act to create the City of Brookhaven Public Facilities Authority and for other purposes. That concludes the order.
I need 402. 402. Now. On the adoption, the yeas are 47, the nays are 2. Did you read the caption? Chair recognizes Senator on the 42nd.
This is local bill for Brookhaven Public Facilities Authority. Very minor change, putting the council
All
and
those
city
in
government
favor
on it.
vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary, unlock the machine. Senator from the 51st will stand by. .402 is next. 402 is next. 402. Chair recognizes no, you got to make a motion. Chair recognizes Senator.
Mr. President, I move that we adopt the Committee on Conference report on SB 402.
Read the caption.
Committee's a conference report on SB 402. The committee's conference on SB 402 recommend that both the Senate and the House of Representatives receive on the position that the attached committee's conference report be adopted by Senator Gooch of the 51st and others. Committee's conference substitute SB 402, a bill we titled enact the Achieving Connectivity Elsewhere Act.
The
for other purposes.
motion, the yeas are 45, the nays are 2. Chair recognizes Senator 51st.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, SB 402, we passed it unanimously in the Senate a month ago.
All those in favor vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary, unlock the machine.
This is rural broadband.
Unlock the machine. Unlock the machine. What else do we have to? Chair recognizes Senator from the 7th first.
Mr. President, I move the Senate agree to the House amendment to the, or the House substitute to the Senate, to Senate Bill 332.
Read the caption.
Senate Bill 332 by Senator Harper the 7th and others. A bill to be titled enactment Article 1 Chapter 2 Title 2 on the OCGA relating hunting, trapping, or fishing and for other purposes.
On the passage of the bill, adoption of the conference committee. The yeas are 50 and the nays are 2, and the conference committee has been adopted. Chair recognizes Senator from the 7th to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, Senate Bill 332 is the outdoor passport bill. We changed it to make sure in regards to a hunting and fishing license, you can still get an outdoor passport. No questions. Yield the wheel.
All those in favor vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary, unlock the machine. All right. I'm gonna get right here. Tee it up to where we adjourn together with the speaker over there. What else? What is this? 26 EMCs. Oh.
Take a minute. I'll say you get for it or against it. Counties under 50,000.
No. I know. Senate from the 25th.
It's disagreement to House substitute.
Read the caption. On the
SB
yeas are
385.
43 and nays are 1.
Senate Bill 385 by Senator Jones, 25th and others. A bill to be titled enactment Code Section 12.8 and 39 of the OCGA related to reimbursement fees and surcharges for other
Chair
purposes.
recognizes Senator from the 25th.
It's a good bill. Need you to vote for it. Thank you.
I did. All those in favor vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary, unlock the machine. SB 385. What is the bill that's got to come off the table, you said? Fine. All right, I'm going to recognize you. Chair recognizes Senator from the 6th.
Mr. President, I make a motion to agree to the amendment to the Senate substitute of 485 and 480 of Senate Bill 485.
485. Read the caption. 485. On the adoption, or excuse me, on the motion to recede, the yeas are 46 and the nays are 5, and the Senate has receded.
Senate Bill 485 by Senator Jordan of the 6th and others. A bill to be titled Act of providing a homestead exemption from City of Atlanta Independent School District for other purposes.
Chair recognizes Senator from 6.
It's tax relief. Vote yes. Thank you.
All those in favor vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary, unlock the machine. Go ahead, Gooch. You want to run? Go. We have got a lot of pages back there. Stuart, Bryce, Lizzie Jane, Mary Lean, all these wonderful people. I can't go through all the names. Y'all walk up the front aisle right quick. Let us recognize you. Thank you so much. Haley, Jake, Jessica, Grant, Olivia, Madison, Amanda, Trey, Bethany, Timothy, James, all of you are wonderful. Gracie, Grace Ann, Tanner, Carter, all of you, thank you very much. Now clear the center aisle.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we agree to the House substitute to SB 426.
Senator from the 31st, what purpose you rise? State your inquiry.
Mr. President, is it true that the House seems to be in violation of our adjournment resolution that said we were going to adjourn at 12 o'clock?
Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that pursuant to Senate Resolution 631, the Senate stand adjourned. Sine die.
Sine die.